China is secretly helping Saudi Arabia build its own ballistic missiles in a move likely to further destabilize the Middle East. Here are the key details. The first unambiguous evidence that Saudi Arabia is building its own ballistic missiles with the help of China has emerged through satellite images, according to CNN, citing the Middlebury Institute of International Studies. The images show a facility operating a burn pit to dispose of solid propellant left over from the production of ballistic missiles. Casting rocket motors results in leftover propellant, which is an explosive hazard, so burn pits are an indication a facility is actively casting solid rocket motors. CNN reports that the transfer of such sensitive technology by China could have ripple effects across the Middle East, particularly as the Biden administration attempts to expand the terms of a nuclear deal with Iran to include restraints on its own missile technology. Iran and Saudi Arabia have been locked in a fierce struggle for regional dominance for decades, and in the context of that multifaceted dispute, where Saudi Arabia has made clear that it sees the conflict in Yemen as the extension of its struggle with the Islamic Republic, it is considered unlikely Tehran would agree to stop making ballistic missiles if Saudi Arabia has indeed started manufacturing its own. Additionally, the Middle East Eye suggests that any U.S. response to the weapons technology being developed could be complicated by its difficult relationship with China, and the fact that the U.S. Senate itself backed a $650 million missile sale to Saudi Arabia earlier this month, used to arm fighter jets during the ongoing war in Yemen. U.S. officials say Iran was behind the kamikaze drone strikes against U.S. forces in Syria last week. Here are the details. The Associated Press reports that U.S. officials said on Monday, October 25th, that they believe Iran was behind the drone attack on the Al-Tanf military outpost in Syria, where U.S. troops are based. The drone attack happened on Wednesday, October 20th, and U.S. officials say the drones were Iranian and Iran appears to have facilitated their use. Officials said they believe the attacks involved as many as 5 kamikaze drones laden with explosive charges, and that they hit both the U.S. side of Al-Tanf garrison and the side where Syrian opposition forces stay. The proliferation of these crude kamikaze drones is part of Iran's regional strategy. The country supports proxies, such as the Houthis in Yemen and Hezbollah in Lebanon, with weapons platforms, says David Schenker, a senior fellow at the Washington Institute of Near East Policy. Often, drones are shipped in parts from Iran and assembled in Gaza, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. There were no reported injuries or deaths as a result of the attack. U.S. and coalition troops are based at Al-Tanf to train Syrian forces on patrols to counter Islamic State militants. The base is located on a road that serves as a vital link for Iranian-backed forces from Tehran all the way to southern Lebanon and Israel. The recent deaths of 2 shipworkers in a mysterious drone strike on an oil tanker highlighted a shadow war between Iran and Israel that could escalate into a real war. We compared the militaries of the 2 sides and found that while Iran has many number advantages, Israel has some crucial quality advantages. Here are the details. We looked at the military strength of Iran and Israel and found that Iran's much larger population of 84 million versus the roughly 9 million people in Israel allows Iran to field an active duty force of 525,000 troops, compared to Israel's 170,000. Iran has more tanks, but these are mostly T-72s and copies of the T-54 and T-55, which are widely considered inferior to Israel's Merkava Mark IV. Israel's air force is larger and much more modern than Iran's, with 66 F-15s, 175 F-16s, and at least 27 F-35 stealth fighters, with plans to own 75 F-35s in total. Iran's air force consists of 63 old F-4s and 26 old F-14s, as well as 19 MiG-29s and 23 Su-24s from Russia and 17 F-7s from China. Israel also possesses 48 attack helicopters compared to Iran's 12. Iran's navy is larger and is modernizing, but Israel's navy has advanced missiles and vessels, and it can likely also launch nuclear-armed cruise missiles from its 5 Dolphin-class submarines, which are believed to operate near the Persian Gulf. Thanks to U.S.-led sanctions, Iran likely has no nuclear weapons on its 29 submarines. Iran pursued nuclear capabilities in the late 1980s and early 1990s, and while Tehran says it doesn't seek nuclear weapons now, its recent enrichment activity has raised questions about its true aims. After years of a shadow war between Iran and Israel, in which both sides used clandestine strikes against each other's commercial and military ships, a British guard and a Romanian sailor have now been killed in a suicide drone strike on an oil tanker. Here are the details. The Associated Press reports that the UK and US joined Israel in saying Iran was behind an attack on an Israeli-operated oil tanker that killed 2 people, and have vowed to respond, calling it a violation of international law. U.S. Navy explosive experts believe a drone strike hit the tanker off the coast of Oman, killing a British security guard and a Romanian shipworker. The strike hit the bridge of the tanker Mercer Street on the night of Thursday, July 29th. It marks the first known fatal attack after years of assaults on commercial shipping in the region linked to tensions with Iran. While no one has claimed responsibility for the attack, Israeli officials alleged Tehran launched the drone strike against a ship that was being operated by an Israeli company. Iran denied the allegations and said Israel killed the shipworkers in a false flag attack designed to show Iran in a bad light. The attack comes after years of tit-for-tat attacks in which Israel and Iran use clandestine methods to attack each other's commercial and military ships, using limpet mines, drones, and other methods to cause damage. A U.S. official speaking on condition of anonymity said the attack appeared to have involved several drones, including a so-called suicide drone, which was presumably responsible for pressing home the attack itself. 2 ships of the Iranian Navy have rounded the southern tip of Africa, becoming the first Iranian Navy ships to ever enter the Atlantic Ocean. This comes just days after Iran's largest Navy ship caught fire and sank. It appears that the 2 Iranian ships are heading for Venezuela, which would have significant geopolitical ramifications. Here are the details. The Drive reports that 2 ships of the Iranian Navy have reportedly rounded South Africa's Cape of Good Hope and appear to be heading into the Atlantic Ocean. The 2 ships are the frigate Sahand and the Makran, a converted tanker that looks like it's designed to be a mobile base. This latest news comes 2 days after the Karg, one of Iran's largest and most important naval ships, sank after suffering a major fire, the causes of which remain unclear. This would be the first time Iranian naval vessels have operated in the Atlantic, and previous reports have indicated that their final destination is in Venezuela, where they might offload a shipment of weapons. While it is still unclear if the ships are carrying any weapons, satellite imagery suggests the Makran is carrying a number of small, fast-attack boats that Iran has used to harass U.S. naval ships in the Persian Gulf. If Iranian Navy vessels gain the ability to operate in the Atlantic, analysts say it would be a significant step forward for Iran, which has tried and failed to do so in the past. The Pentagon says the delivery of Iranian weapons to Venezuela would be a provocative act and a threat to America's partners in the Western Hemisphere. The Pentagon said, "We would reserve the right to take appropriate measures in concert with our partners to deter the delivery or transit of such weapons." The U.S. Navy revealed that attack boats of the Iran Revolutionary Guard harassed 2 U.S. Coast Guard vessels just after the U.S. and Iranian governments committed to new negotiations. Here are the details. NBC reports that a group of Iranian vessels from the country's Revolutionary Guard harassed 2 U.S. Coast Guard ships for 3 hours in the Persian Gulf earlier this month. The U.S. Navy said on Tuesday that this was the first such incident in a year, and the encounter on April 2nd came just as the U.S. and Iran had restarted negotiations on reviving the 2015 nuclear agreement between Tehran and world powers. 3 Iranian fast attack boats and 1 larger ship, a 55-meter twin-hulled vessel, approached and swarmed the Coast Guard ships at close range. The larger Iranian ship repeatedly crossed in front of the 2 U.S. vessels at an unnecessarily close range, coming within 70 yards, according to a U.S. Navy statement. Some regional experts say the Revolutionary Guard has sought to provoke tense encounters in the past to undermine Iranian diplomacy with the West. Iran's foreign minister recently said the Revolutionary Guard has often undercut his government's diplomacy and that he himself had zero influence over foreign policy. The ongoing tension between Iran and the U.S. is considered to be one of the world's most dangerous political power kegs that could ignite and explode into a third world war. That's because any military conflict between the 2 nations would likely draw in all of the world's most powerful countries. Iran's Navy has formally commissioned its largest vessel, the Makran, a former oil tanker converted into a logistics vessel with a helicopter pad. Here is what we know. State TV reported the Makran joined a missile drill in the Gulf of Oman on Wednesday, January 13th, according to a report by the Associated Press. The new Iranian vessel is only slightly smaller than the U.S. Navy's Expeditionary Sea Bases, which are 764 feet or 233 meters long, and are also derived from oil tanker designs. The Makran was converted from the oil tanker Persian Gulf. Citing Iranian state TV, the Drive's War Zone blog reports the 121,000 metric ton Makran is 748 feet long, 138 feet wide, and 70 feet tall. Per the War Zone, Iranian media reports state the Makran will be able to carry 6 or 7 helicopters. Video posted to YouTube by the semi-official TomoNews outlet shows RH-53D Sea Stallion, AS-61A4 Sea King, and AB-212 ASW helicopters flying from the ship, as well as what the War Zone identifies as an indigenous Pelican II drone. It's not visible in these pretty pictures, but one can assume that the flight deck also has a giant IDF target painted all over it. But hey, one can always dream. Iranian journalist Mohammad Awaz claims to have received leaked information from the country's government about the assassination of Iran's leading nuclear scientist on Friday. Awaz says the attack was carried out by 12 gunmen who were supported by a team of 50 operatives providing them with information and logistics. He says the hit squad knew Mohsen Fakhrizadeh's security convoy was on its way to his holiday home and were waiting in ambush at a traffic circle marking the entrance to the town of Asbard. As the convoy entered the traffic circle, a car bomb exploded, hitting the rear security car. The 12 attackers then opened fire on the middle car with machine guns and 2 sniper rifles. According to Awaz, one of the attackers then dragged the scientist out of his car and executed him. The attackers then disappeared, and so far not one attacker has been caught. The Iranian Fars news agency gave a conflicting report, saying that there were no gunmen and that the attack was done by firing a remote-controlled machine gun mounted on the truck that later exploded. Iran's top covert operations commander and arguably the second most powerful man in the country was killed by a U.S. drone strike in Baghdad last week. General Qasem Soleimani had served Iran as a major planner of military and intelligence operations for 20 years. General Qasem Soleimani, head of Iran's Expeditionary Quds Force, was killed early Friday by a U.S. drone that fired missiles into his convoy near Baghdad International Airport. The U.S. military has confirmed that it carried out the attack. The Times of Israel reports that a MQ-9 Reaper drone fired 4 missiles into 2 cars and destroyed the vehicles on the airport's access road. Citing local media sources, the paper reports that the blast tore Soleimani apart, and the general was later identified by the ring he wore on his hand. The strike killed Soleimani, his son-in-law, and 5 Iranian Revolutionary Guard members. According to the New York Times, several Tehran-backed Iraqi militia leaders in the convoy were also killed. The Times of Israel reported 10 fatalities for the airstrike. The Washington Examiner reports that the MQ-9 drone was favored for its quiet propellers and loitering capabilities. Citing debris analysis by independent observers, Forbes reports that the missiles utilized could be the JIGM, a missile type that adds advanced sensors to the Hellfire missile. The U.S. moved to designate Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps and its Quds Force a terrorist organization last year. U.S. President Donald Trump said in a statement that the IRGC actively participates in, finances, and promotes terrorism as a tool of statecraft.
For more news animations and explainers, hit the subscribe and bell button to join the TomoNews family. Thanks for watching.